It is Saturday, January 20th, and the Splash Zone is back in your life. I'm Matt Modi with my 4 favorite NBA player props for today's NBA betting slate. And I gotta say, I absolutely loved the board today. So I'm not gonna pretend that if I end up having a bad day, that it was just a bad slate. I actually love what we have today. I love my 4 picks, and I love the board in general. But before I can give you my 4 picks for today, gotta do a recap from yesterday, which was another good day. We went 3-1. Yesterday, breaking the cold streak that we were on recently. We were up over 2 units with yesterday's plays. Now, the play that I got wrong was Devin Booker. I had him to go under his point total. He scored 50. I promise you his point total was not over under 50, 60 and a half. So I got that one wrong. Luckily, that still counts the same as every other play. And the other 3 we got cashed. Jamal Murray over 2.5 made 3-pointers cashed. Jeremy Grant over 20.5 points cashed. And LaMelo Ball over 25.5 points cashed. So getting those 3 to cash, again, we ended the day up over 2 units. That brings our entire profit season to date. We are up 39.5 units, 39.5, with an ROI of 24.6%. So we were insanely hot last weekend. We started this weekend with a 3-1 day yesterday. Let's hope we can have another crazy hot weekend this time around. If you are not already, I would appreciate it if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. When we go on this heater, you're going to want to be around for it. And as I mentioned, I loved the board today. So again, if I have a bad day, don't let me tell you that I just didn't like what I saw, because I really, really like today's picks, which we can now get right into. So the first play that we're going to go ahead and lock in here is in the Raptors versus Knicks game. I'm taking Immanuel Quickley over 28.5 points, rebounds, assists, PRA. This is offered at -115 odds at ESPN Bet. I will say ESPN Bet had the best price for 3 of the 4 plays and was the second best for the 4th one. So I'd recommend logging into that account and keeping it open. But for this play, for the Quickley one specifically, it's a really, really good price we're getting at ESPN Bet. The -115 is a little steep, but compare that to the rest of the sports books. Caesars prices this at -135. As does DraftKings. And FanDuel actually prices his over-under above this number. So instead of pumping it up, the best value we got was at the 28.5. So that's what I kept it at. Now, I haven't looked at anything in terms of social media this morning. I would imagine a lot of people are going to be on Quickley because it's a revenge narrative against the Knicks who traded him. To me, to be clear, I am not putting that much stock in the revenge narrative. To me, that's a bonus, and I would have liked this game against any other team if the profiles were the same. It's a great price we got against, at ESPN Bet, and it's a pretty good matchup against the Knicks as well. Those 2 things are why I'm on this play, and the fact that Quickley's been awesome for the Raptors. He's basically been exactly what the Raptors needed since he was traded. Someone who can space the floor, who can get his own bucket, who can shoot. All that stuff was incredibly important for the Raptors. Now, he missed this number in his first game. Since then, he's gone over in 6 of 9 games for the Raptors, which is a very, very nice number. I also like the fact that he just missed it in his last game against the Bulls. Granted, the Bulls are a pretty tough point guard matchup, so he's not a player that you would have wanted to target against the Bulls anyway. But the fact that he went under, tonight we get to fade recent results. The Knicks defense generally is pretty stout, and they play at a relatively slow pace, but one area in which they do struggle is against point guards. Last game, they just let Fred VanVleet score 24 points and have 12 assists against them. Another game, Tyus Jones had 15 assists against the Knicks. Granted, he didn't score a lot, but he got up to 15 assists. So I like both Quickley to have a good game in regards to points and assists as well. But I decided to take it with the PRA because that was a safer play. That was the better value than his points plus assist as well. Really, really like this play. Next up, Bucks versus Pistons game. I'm taking Damian Lillard over 25.5 points plus 100 odds, also at ESPN Bet. Dame has been a little bit hit or miss recently, but this matchup against the Pistons, is just as juicy as it gets. It literally could not possibly be a juicier matchup for someone like Damian Lillard. The website that I use for this is called Courtside Pal. They're phenomenal. They track players based on where they shoot and also where they score, which I know that sounds confusing, but they're 2 different things. The shooting aspect just takes into account the fact that they are shooting, not whether they go in or not. Doesn't take into account skill. Scoring obviously does impact where they score from. And the Pistons give up the most points per game to someone that A, takes the type of shots that Damian Lillard does, and B, scores in the areas in which Damian Lillard is proficient at scoring. Again, I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but they are two different stats, and the Pistons are literally the worst when it comes to both of them. So I laddered Dame up to 30 points as well. You can get that at plus 210 at FanDuel. I just put a half unit on that. I'm not going to track if the ladder hits, just if he hits the official play. But if you wanted to ride with me, you could ladder that. As I mentioned, it's as good of a matchup as it gets. And I like the fact that we can fade recent results with Dame, who, as I mentioned, has been hit or miss recently. He's only gone over this number in 4 of the last 10 games for the Bucks, including a pretty disappointing performance in the Bucks' last game out. They played the Cavs, which should have been a good matchup for Dame. He only scored 17 points, and the Bucks just got trounced. But the Pistons, they gave up the 3rd most points per game to point guards in general. Unsurprisingly, both times these two teams have played this year, Dame cooked them, scoring 34 and 33 points in those 2 games. So not only cashed our play, but cashed the ladder play as well. So I like tonight as a bounce back game for the Bucks, bounce back game for Dame. And he's shown the ability to torch these types of defenses in the past. So another play that I absolutely love. Next up, Spurs versus Wizards. I'm taking Victor Wembanyama, Wemby over 22.5 points, plus 105, again, at ESPN Bet. This is another really good price that we're getting at ESPN Bet, who, I don't know, just seems to have fallen asleep at the wheel this morning. I will admit, most books prices over under at 21.5, not the 22 number that we're taking. But again, they heavily juice the over. Caesars prices the over at minus 139. DraftKings at minus 135. Now, if you wanted to be safer, you could take him to go over 21.5 at minus 115. That would be a good price. But I like the better value at the 22.5, which is what we're officially riding with. The books that do price it at 22.5 would be FanDuel, that has that at minus 113. BetOnline also prices it, has it at minus 114. So really, no matter how you slice it, both the over 21.5 and 22.5 are good prices at ESPN Bet. Again, I'm just officially taking the plus money banger. And what is another just incredible matchup against the Wizards? They give up the 2nd most points per game to someone of Victor Wembanyama's scoring profile, which makes sense. We've been targeting the Wizards all year. Their defense is an abomination. They generally give up a ton of points to big men, especially big men like Wemby, who can both shoot and drive to the basket, because the Wizards give up a ton of points in the paint. So I'm laddering Wemby up both to 25 plus points and 30 plus points as well. Both those are best offered at DraftKings. Again, we only track official plays, but I do like to tell people when I'm laddering plays as well. Wemby's also been on fire recently. I know I generally like to fade recent results, but that's not what we're doing tonight. They're not results that I want to fade. Instead, I want to back them. He's gone over this number in 6 of his last 10 games, but he has hit it in 3 straight. Actually, he scored 25 plus points in the last 3 games and in 4 of the last 6 games as well. As for the Spurs, they're going to be on the 2nd night of a back-to-back, but they sat Wemby out yesterday, so he's going to be fresh. Everybody else is going to be tired, so maybe he'll have a higher usage rate than normal since he sat out. With that, with how on fire he's been, and with the matchup against the Wizards, I think this is a smash spot for Wemby. Just love it. I love all these plays, including this one. And lastly, our 4th and final pick, we're going back to the Raptors versus Knicks game, and I'm taking OG Anunoby over 16.5 points. This is best offered at plus 106 odds at Bet Rivers, but because they stink, you can also get it at plus 105 at ESPN Bet. Same with the Quickley one. I'm imagining this is probably going to be a pretty popular bet today because of the revenge factor. But again, I want to be clear, that's not something I'm putting a lot of stock into. I like this matchup because I like this play because the matchup against the Raptors is very, very juicy for someone like OG Anunoby. And he's been playing pretty well recently. As I am with all these plays, I am laddering this one up to 20 plus points as well. Best offered on DraftKings, I believe, for plus 210 odds. As I mentioned, OG has been pretty good recently. He's only gone over this number in 5 of his last 10 games, but if you look even more recently than that, he's done it in 3 of 4 and in 4 of 6 as well. So the smaller sample size, he's been playing well. So another situation where we aren't doing my typical betting strategy of fading recent results. And we're not doing that a ton today, I will admit. And as I mentioned, the Raptors are a great matchup for small forwards like OG Anunoby. Props.cash lists the Raptors as the 2nd best matchup for small forward point props specifically. And I'd imagine those numbers are only going to get worse. with the Siakam trade. And then as we get further removed from this OG Anunoby trade as well, according to Courtside Pal, the Raptors give up the third most points per game to someone of OG's scoring the profile, which makes sense considering what we said earlier about the matchup. I love this play for OG. The whole revenge thing, it's just a bonus that I don't put a ton of stock in. But if he's a little bit more motivated than he has been, that's great because it's already a good matchup and he's already been playing well. And that's all we got. 4 plays for you guys to lock in. Just loved the board that we had today. So it'd be really embarrassing if we had a bad day. I'm not expecting that. If you're riding with me, again, make sure to comment and let me know. Other than that, I would appreciate it if you could like, all that good stuff. Appreciate everybody for watching and have a good one.